Now you're looking at a diagram that shows you the overall change process when you are pursuing this SSLD self-help. If you look at the diagram, then you know that you have actually already completed the most important first steps in this process. And you have good reasons to congratulate yourself because a lot of problem have chosen to deny a problem, to avoid a problem, to run away from a problem instead of like doing what you have done, choosing to deal with it and preparing to move forward so that you will be addressing your problem and you'll be attaining your goals and you'll be bringing about positive change in your life. So you see this progression here, right? If you move on, right, this is what is going to happen. Um, so what I want to focus on in this particular session is to look at what I put on the top of the diagram. And you see here, engaging with yourself, self-acceptance, and attunement. Yes. So those are the things that I want to talk about. So what we are doing here is that we are going to look at how you're bringing about change through self-help. And that is actually an interesting way of thinking about a relationship that you have with yourself. As I said, if you have come this far, you have already done something wonderful for yourself, with yourself, right? That is like you're not running away from a problem. You're choosing to do something positive. You're looking forward to some positive change. And while you do that, there is, remember what is in the diagram? Right, okay. So there are two key points I want to emphasize. One is self-acceptance. The other is attunement. So what you see here is that you will have to think of a very positive way of moving forward without being dragged by some of these very commonly experienced feelings. That is what? That is self-judgment. That is guilt. That is shame and like feeling remorse. And all those feelings were human. All these feelings are natural. Uh, if you make the best of it. So when you experience those feelings, it means that you have the capacity to self-reflect. You can look at yourself, take a and sort of an objective perspective and look at yourself. And when you initially experience those feelings, right, that means you have self-awareness. But you should not allow yourself, right, to be trapped in those feelings for too long. Right? It is healthy and helpful for you to experience them. But then what you may want to quickly move on to is to tell yourself, okay, yes, something not so good has happened. I might not have done the most helpful thing, but what is most important for me is not to continue judging and blaming myself, but do something positive so that the next time around, I'll be doing better. I'll be like taking steps that are more helpful. So that is what I should be focusing on, right? Instead of like judging and blaming yourself. Later on, as you move through the SSLD self-learning process a little bit further, you will also realize why it is not particularly helpful to be blaming yourself or judging yourself. And actually, the SSLD model is set up in such a way to minimize this judgment because it is not necessary. And if you focus on understanding the problem according to SSLD language, then you understand, well, maybe you have already understood that at this point. That is like everything, every problem, everything that you did that you're not proud of, those things are driven by some unmet needs of yours. These problematic behaviors are in a way functional. So remember that. And understanding that, then you know that like you did that not because you're inherently bad or you're inherently weak, but you have unmet needs that you haven't found a better way to address. That is what happened. And once you have found a better way to address the same needs, you can like move away from that, move beyond that, right? So self-acceptance is good. Oh, the other thing that I also want to emphasize here is that like self-acceptance can be generalized. Once you understand that, well, I did that because, or I did that because I had needs that were not effectively met, right? You can then be utilizing the same perspective, same angle to look at other people. And if you see someone doing something awful, well, like that can disturb you, that can annoy you. But then soon enough, you'll be able to come around and say, okay, I can see why this person is doing that. This person has unmet needs and he or she doesn't know better. If he or she has a better means of addressing those needs, then maybe he or she doesn't have to do such terrible, awful things. That will also help us not only be like more forgiving towards ourselves, but we can also be more forgiving of other people. Not only forgiving, but like seeing possibilities of change and how this other person can also behave differently or take alternate courses of action, so that we do not have to keep blaming or judging him or her. So if everyone does that, you can easily imagine that relating with people can be easier and more positive. We are actually making the world a better place for everyone. The second key point here is attunement, right? So here you see that we have to be attuned with ourselves, meaning we are not going to push ourselves too hard or put ourselves in uh, impossible situations, making unrealistic, overly demanding expectations or setting standards that are too high. But we do it like step by step. And all the way we are in tune with ourselves. So we are flowing with it, like naturally, like think of that, like you're, moving along with this in a natural flow. And that is the best way to achieve change. And as you know, like a lot of people like set up like marvelous plans for themselves, like I have to run 2 miles a day and like cut down my diet or um, be nice to people or save enough money to purchase my first home. Uh, and and you see a lot of people making plans that fail, well, because those plans are not in tune uh, in terms of these systematic steps that you're taking. Those steps are not in tune with who you are and what you're capable of doing. And so staying in tune is important. And in the process, not judging yourself, allowing yourself to make mistakes and then modifications like refinement, fine tuning, and not judging yourself, like staying with like who you are, you will actually be able to move on much more smooth and pleasant process of change. So those are the 2 key points I want to emphasize. Remember again, like what those are? Yes, self-acceptance and attunement, right? So remember those.